Welcome back to the second part of the fall of the Mongol Empire. If you missed part 1, make sure to check it out first because we're diving straight in where we left after ending part 1. So, the limited number of khans. Due to this and a decreasing number of heirs each generation, many people are looking for underlying causes. Causes other than alcohol. Scholars like Anne Broadbridge have proposed that this was a result, given the Khans' preference for intermarrying into the same families for generations. There is a risk of inbreeding. The combined effects of consanguinity and widespread alcohol abuse in both men and women. The alarming drop in fertility among the elite ilkhanate population over the past few decades may be explained by this. In the 13th century, while Hulagu had given birth to at least 25 tiny chinggis, a sizable brood, Ghazan had sons and daughters, but by the turn of the century only one of his daughters had made it through childhood, while Yetu, his brother, had a large number of stillborn or dying children. His 12 wives include only 3 of Yetu's children, Absad and 2 daughters, one of whom was a daughter even reached marriageable age, who still preceded him in time. However hard he tried, Absad himself could only manage to Dilash Khatun, his widow, was conceived by him. No brothers, sons, or clear males were still alive. The head of the state, however, the justification of Absad passing comes, according to academics like Charles, the heir directly responsible for the fall of the ilkhanate. Melville, who perhaps went too far, a contrast to the idea of the ilkhanate declining without, Edward Gibbon advises us to ignore issues that have arisen. Basically, Melville says the gulf between the Khan and the Noyad, the military elite, had grown disrespect towards the Chinggisids. It was hardly a novel occurrence for a monarch to pass away without a clear heir. The Mongol Empire's problem. The princess would confirm a candidate under the Kiriltai system. As needed, they could provide new khans and a regent could oversee affairs until this could be resolved. This was occasionally the way the United Mongol Empire and other khanates were governed. In the variant of Baghdad, Khatun and the ilkhanate undoubtedly had a strong woman to fill the position. It was said of the well-connected Baghdad Khatun that she was a formidable, learned and proud woman, who openly carried a sword around her waist and had great influence over state affairs. Some felt that she was bossing Abshad around in a more traditional Mongolian framework. An obvious regent would have been Baghdad Khatun. However, as Melville asserts, the Khan's actions are, he had sourced the military elite since Ghazan. They must have felt something roughly, and that a change was being made to the traditional Mongolian way of life. Islamization is undoubtedly the most blatant example of this. Ghazan and Yetu both. The Mongol Khans opted to use massive, pricey public funerals rather than the customary private and open-air mausoleums. The Kuriltai as a method of electing and influencing the next monarch. Major decisions were discarded, as was the Mamluk War's resolution through negotiations rather than conquest. It must have appeared diplomatically to be betrayed of Mongol imperial ideology by taking away their stake, without substituting a new loyalty to uphold in the replacement system. The need of the Noyad to uphold Genghis ideologically or rule had been gradually undermined by the Khans. Absad was just a 12-year-old boy when he ascended the throne in 1317. Choban's extended period of time, the regency increased the power of the military elite while further reducing the Khan's authority. Absad didn't truly take the throne on his own right until Choban passing in 1327, and he did so for 8 years of age. Chiat al-Din Muad has visited in the late Rashad al-San's dins, attempted to implement tax reforms that would have given the central government more leverage over the regional princes and their appanages. It appears to have been a futile effort. These military princes were only enraged by this. According to Melville's theory, such a gap between the military elite and the Khan was getting wider as a result of the failed measures. Upon Absad's passing in November 1335, the vizier Ghiyat al-Din Muhammad was tasked with trying to navigate the ship while Uzbek Khan's invasion is underway. 5 days after that, Ghiyat al-Din planned the installation of Arpa as a new Khan on December 5th. Kyun, his grandson, Hulagu Arik Boki, the younger brother of Hulagu, was the ancestor of Arpa rather than Hulagu. Ghiyat al-Din took him out of the shadows. He was chosen because of his military leadership skills. Every secondary source that mentions Arpa Khan refers to him as old-school Mongol, and all evidence points to him being a military man. Arpa received back was compiled to rejoin the Golden Horde during the winter of 1335. After Arpa Khan's successful return, Ghiyat al-Din had high expectations for his new protege. as was Arpa, a capable leader who has demonstrated his abilities in upholding the ilkhanate and a potential leader for the Mongols. Around, it appears that he had little patience for formalities or courtesies, and it's not clear if he was a Muslim. Arpa was a Christian, according to an anonymous Armenian chronicler, or at the very least, he at least took great pride in the old ways. We might ponder whether Giyad al-Din was intended to occur here, selecting a man who would appeal to the Noyad more because of his dislike of the life of a courtier. Giyad appeared, according to Oleg, Graba and Sheila Blair, soon after Arpa's ascension. A beautiful illustration edition of the great Mongol Shahnameh, which al-Din ordered be produced. Persian national epic of Frida is a very expensive project given the size and amount of love. It is obvious with intricate artwork that the ilkhanate elite did not anticipate. They were about no experience of crisis. Arpan Khan, however, was not standing firm. The expectant Dilshad Khatun Saad's widow had run away to Ali Pasha, the governor of Diyarbakir. The internment of Arpa was also opposed by Haji Khatun's sister, Ab Saad's mother. Haji Khatun within the Arpa Khan was Sati Bey, sister of Absad, to establish his legitimacy. Abshad gave lavish gifts or released the commanders he had alienated or imprisoned from jail, and Baghdad Khatun received all the blame for Absad's passing, who was never given the opportunity to become regent. Not only is Absad's poisoning alleged, Baghdad Khatun was put to death for allegedly conspiring with the Golden Horde in treason. Beaten to death with a club by a Greek slave, Arpa Khan continued to search in the wrong places for enemies. Ali Pasha rallied those who were offended by Arpa's selection as Khan, an active man who might restrict their rights. Finally, Dilshad Khatun, as a girl, Abshad's only child, was born, but Ali Pasha continued to maneuver. Al Pasha elevated Musa, his own candidate, to the position of second Khan at the start of 1336. An alleged grandson, Musa, the son of former Khan, was completely Ali puppet. Pasha collaborating with Haji Khatun. In the past, Shaykh Shahsan Yaliya was compelled to give his wife Baghdad Khatun to Absad. He organized an uprising against Arpa Khan in the name of Musa Khan in April of the year 1336. The army of Arpa was routed on the battlefield. Giyad al-Din Muhammad and he were quickly apprehended and dead. Arpa Khan's rule came to an end at the point, making him the final Khan to hold a position of power. The ilkhanate can be considered to have ended with Arpa's death because it eliminated any ties to it. The ilkhanate state was upheld by the local commanders. All eyes were on al-Pasha as Musa Khan was crowned. Each of them understood that, should he arise, he could rule through his own puppet, chinggis. To have one available, the commanders proclaimed no less than 8 Khans between 1335 and 1343. Most people are only aware of their names and their controllers. The allied forces that had taken Arpa Khan started fighting right away and choosing their own candidates by 1338. Hassan Kushik Little Hassan, a grandson of Shoban, installed Sati Bey as the new empress, sister of Absad, widow of Arpa Khan and daughter of the late Khan Lietu. Late in 1338, a Chinggis woman became Khan for the first time. The Khutbah was read in her honor. Coins bearing the title of Khan were made in her name, and she was officially speaking. He was in charge of the ilkhanate. The sole female Chinggisid, however, Sati Bey Khan. Khan had little actual influence and primarily served as a little Hassan's tool for retaining power. She was married off to the following puppet Khan by the middle of 1339 before going missing in the 1340s. Up until the 1350s, when the last puppet emperor was overthrown, the ilkhanate pretext was kept up. In 1353, northwestern Iranian and Iraqi dynasties have adapted Persian culture. The Kobanids and Yalayiridids claimed legitimacy and descent from being Khan's generals, but didn't claim it for themselves. Warlords and local dynasties took control on the east. New Turkic beyliks ranging from the Kara, Konuli and the Osmanli appeared as they moved westward. Absad did not outlive the legitimacy of Chinggisids as basis for rule for very long. At Tuga, Temur Alang or Tamerlane, the Chagatai Khanate was in ruins when the Tamerlane became king. The Middle Ulus is still there. The history of the Khanate is chaotic, convoluted and filled with insignificant details, making it the least understood of the Khanates. Khans vying for supremacy, the majority of the 13th century had seen Qaida rule over the Qadtais. Gede Khan is the grandson of Gede Khan. What came to be known as the Khanate of the Gedes was Dzungaria, is located in the present-day Xinjiang province of China and eastern Kazakhstan. Both the great Khans, Gede and Guyuk, had enjoyed the pastures in this area. However, after the Mongol Khan seized control in 1251, the new great Khan ordered a purge of the Gedes and Gagatids. The majority of the princes descended from Gede, as well as their descendants, were assassinated. Lands that the central government had seized, only a few minor princes, including the young Kaidu, were still alive. Until Mungi's passing in 1259, Kaidu remained in his solitary pastures without saying a word. In the aftermath, Kaidu consistently worked to regain control of the former Gede lands, fighting alongside the Chagatai Khan and receiving momentary support from the Golden Horde by the 1270s. Kaidu had developed to a point where he was able to expand the Gede Khanate in addition to rebuilding it. He would formally establish himself as its Khan and start to unify the divided Chagatai. He installed Dua, a Chagatai's grandson, and the Chagatai throne in 1282. Kaidu and Dua collectively, they proved to be unreliable allies and would occasionally raid Kublai Khan Yuan empires. Reaching Karakorum, former capital, their impact was wide-ranging, extending form. The son of Dua would assault the Delhi Sultanate. However, contrary to popular belief, there's no proof that Kaidu ever attempted to argue to fill the role of the Great Khan. He was Kublai's adversary and the Khan of the Gedes. But he never made an attempt to overthrow Kublai's rule over the Mongols. The Chagatai Khan Dua assisted in coordinating a revolt against Kaidu after he passed away from wounds sustained in a battle in 1301. He made peace between the Mongol Khanates out of concerns that the other Khans might band together against him. The Mongols once more acknowledged the Great Khan's supremacy in 1304 and 1305. Kublai's nominal grandson Temur led Jitu before the Yuan dynasty demise. The Western Khanates would maintain their fictitious allegiance to the Yuan dynasty while also exchanging ambassadors and paying tribute to Golden Horde Khans. For instance, it made money off of Jonkira-era Jonkei-owned lands in China. Due to this lull in hostilities, Duan and his successors with the Yuan dynasty assistance. The Gede Khanate was destroyed and the lands were divided up among them. After Dua passed away in 1307, his 6 sons took turns ruling over the following 27 years. The throne of the Chagatai. The Chagataites became unstable as a result of the quick succession and rendered the Khanate's leadership less equipped to address a growing rift within the state. There was rivalry among the different sons for those who wished to uphold nomadism, as well as traditional practices, those influenced by Islam and the urbanized culture of wealthy cities. That of Transoxania, the Khans became more enamored with the Khanate's wealth in the west. The princes and lords of the eastern Khanate, who continued to live a nomadic and largely Islamic-influenced individual, felt more and more powerless. When the final son of Dua, in 1331, Tarmashirin, his grandson, ascended to the Chagatai throne, while his attempts to impose Islam were, he also never even visited the eastern half of the Khanate, which provided he sparked a set of tensions. In the summer of 1334, a rebellion arose in the eastern part of the Khanate against Tamashirin Khan. In quick order, Tamashirin was killed, and in the matter of succession, all hell broke loose. For 30 years, the succession had been confined to Dua's sons, but with Tamashirin's death, the succession was no longer confined to Dua's son. The position was open for all claimants, various contenders of different lineages and different places. They fought for the throne and were usually overthrown almost as soon as they took power. The legitimacy of the Chagatai Khans was eroded as more and more regional lords acted as their own. At best, they paid nominal heed to whoever had most recently claimed the title of Khan. At various times, there were even several Khans reigning simultaneously. By 1347 in Transoxania, a non-Chinggis Kazakh Khan deposed the reigning Khan and began ruling through puppet Khans. In the same year, in the eastern part of the Khanate, the lords elected their own Khan, Tuglu Temur, as a descendant of Dua, with 2 major rival claimants for power. In 1347 became the usual date in scholarship for the division of the Chagatai Khanate into 2 realms, Transoxania in the west, sometimes still called the Chagatai Khanate, and Mogolistan east of the Sir. The Darya River, both halves of the Chagatai Khanate, considered themselves the true heirs of Chagatai and referred to each other with disparaging terms. In Mogolistan in the 1350s, Tuglu Temur Khan converted to Islam, cementing the process of Islamization there. However, the sources indicate that the process of conversion of the nomads of Mogolistan continued. well into the 15th and 16th centuries, after the murder of Emir Kazakh Khan at the end. The 1350s, Tughlu Timur Khan used this as a pretext to invade Transoxania. In two campaigns in 1360 and 1361, Tughlu Timur enforced the reunification of the Chagatai Khanate. In Transoxania, Tughlu Timur installed his son Ilyas as the regional governor before returning to Mongolistan. Many tribal leaders joined Tughlu Timur while others fled, including Haji Beg, the chief of the Barlas. One member of the upper echelon of the Barlas did not flee. In Tughlu Timur Khan's absence, he was able to convince the conquering Tughlu Timur Khan to appoint him as head of the Barlas. This was the first appearance of the young Timur, but you may perhaps know him better by the nickname given to him later in life. That refers to his limp, Aksak Timur in Turkish, Timur-Lang in Persian, which in English became Timur the Lame, Tamerlane, Tughlu Timur, Chagatai Khan. He did not long enjoy his conquest. For like all good Chinggis monarchs, he suddenly died in his early 30s in 1363. So powerful had he been, though, that his descendants continued to rule. In parts of Mongolistan through the 17th century, without his father's backing, Ilyas was, in 1365, a coalition of forces led by Kazakhan's grandson, Emir Hussein, drove the Kazakhans out of Transoxania, and Temur of the Barlas soon after Timur and his ally Hussein were at each other's throats, a competition in which Timur emerged the victor. In 1370, the Emir Timur was master of Transoxania. So began Tamerlane's great wars of conquest and a transition from Chagatai to Transoxania. To Timurid, meanwhile, the eastern Chagataids in Mongolistan continued to rule in many, rather pretty minor khanates. If you want to find out how this conquest ended, make sure to stick around, like this video, comment what you thought of this episode, and if it's out already, make sure to click the video you see on screen right now to watch part 3 of the fall of the Mongol Empire.